It's Care Providers of Minnesota's The Inside Scoop, featuring your advocacy team, Patty Cullen, Toby Pearson, Aaron Bowie, and Todd Bergstrom. This week's host, Toby Pearson.
Welcome to today's Inside Scoop. May 10th, Friday. The clock is winding down. So what are they doing, is what you may be asking. The short answer is nothing, but the longer answer is this. This week they're meeting in conference committees. They spent a lot of hours going through side-by-sides of where the House positions are and where the Senate positions are, specifically in Health and Human Services, where they have a lot to iron out in differences. They have probably spent 12-ish maybe hours this week going back and forth on where their positions are. This is pretty typical. This is also standard for them, which brings me to the next point, which is pretty standard for how the process works. So the process is they're going to sit in conference committee and kind of gnash things out, but they can't actually act and finish things until they get their spending targets from leadership. So what's going on in spending targets? Well, the governor, the House Speaker, Melissa Hortman, and the Senate Majority Leader, Paul Gazelka, get into meetings and try to figure out how much money they want to spend. Right now, they're only about $2 billion apart. This week also featured what is usually referred to as the Capitol blow-up, where they decide they've had enough of each other and they can't talk about it anymore because nobody's moving. So it's pretty typical that happens some point during this week. And then what they do is they go fishing tomorrow, because tomorrow's the fishing opener, and then they spend Sunday morning with Mother's Day, and then they come back and get back down to business, usually on Sunday afternoon into evening, and start exchanging offers back and forth again. The big issues that they continue to argue about are provider tax, which is in the Health and Human Services budget. There's the OneCare money that's in the Health and Human Services. They also have these other issues of tax conformity issues, education spending issues, and the ever-present gas tax conversation that they all have to resolve before they can assign how much money they're going to spend in Health and Human Services. So while they're having all the conversation about the money being spent, the conversation in the conference committee is about how different the language is. Huge differences in the language, specifically in our areas, which are the Senate file has money for moratorium, has electronic monitoring language, has money for ombudsman, and has kind of a disproportionate share payment for elderly waiver, meaning if you take more elderly waiver, there's some way that they'll do a grant program to give you a little bump in your rates so that will help. The House, on the other hand, has the assisted living licensure language, which is overburdensome and also is going to affect access. It has the cuts to nursing homes, $68 million, and it has a massive expansion of swing bed language, all of which we oppose. So the short story is right now we support the Senate and not the House. So what do they have to do to get to the end? Well, leadership has to agree on targets, and then the conferees, the Senate, is Benson, Abler, Jensen, Marty, and Utke. The House is Liebling, Moran, Hamilton, Halverson, Schultz. They both have to agree on what's going to get spent. How likely is that? Well, stay tuned for next week to see if they can actually get there. But this week's action is this. In a meeting with some providers yesterday, somebody on the governor's staff said they're not hearing enough about the cuts to nursing homes. So the action is simple. Call the governor's office and tell them we need to support seniors and their caregivers, not cut their funding. Simple message. Governor needs to hear from you. That is today's Inside Scoop. Thanks for watching.